Today we're talking vintage watch market. Hey everybody, Adam here from Menta Watches, joined by Jordan today. I thought in this video, heading into the auction season, we would do a little vintage watch market update, see where the lay of the land is, and I think the best way to do that is to review the Monaco Legend Group's auction that just happened, take a look at some of the results, take a look at some of the big auction lots, some of the smaller auction lots, and see how they correlate to what we're seeing in the overall market today and how prices are kind of trending right now. So I think we should just jump right into it. I didn't even pull out any lots ahead of time. I think we're just going to scroll through the results. Right off the bat, lot number one, I think is just a quick, interesting tidbit. It was a Gerald Genta, one of the mother of pearl Mickey dials, one of the retro fantasies. I'm a huge fan of this watch. They have skyrocketed in price recently. They used to be like, I don't know, like $5,000, $6,000.
They were less at one point. When I first started with Adam, I mean, you could get them for $2,000, $3,000.
Yeah, this one sold for 13,000 euros, which equates to, I don't know, like $14,000, which is what we've kind of been seeing in the market. They've all been selling in the larger 36 millimeter size in the mid-teens level. Some is reaching up as high as 20 grand if they have like box and papers. I've also seen a lot more interest in the earlier Genta stuff, like the minute repeaters and skeletonized calendar watches. What are those, like hexagonal cases? Yeah. Is that hexagon, am I right? Hexagonal case. Some of that stuff, not really so much like the 80s and 90s stuff towards the end of the Genta line, but the earlier stuff for sure. There's been a lot more interest, and especially with LVMH revitalizing the brand, I think you're going to see a lot more interest in that stuff. And they made some great watches. I mean, it's Gerald Genta, so I don't disagree with the trend.
I just think that it's, Gerald Genta, it's the iconic name with, some of the best designs ever. It offered the best bang for buck value in the watch market for many, many years, and people are finally paying attention.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so moving along. The very first stone dial, and I bring up stone dial because A, it's the next lot that's just on the screen, and also because it just correlates to what's been going on in the market, was a lapis dial 18038 that sold for what seems to be cheap of 36,400 euros. This dial apparently did have a couple cracks, and it goes back to what we were saying before, because the rest of the stone dials that we'll see throughout the auction, and some incredibly rare ones, did exceptional. They did some big numbers, but the ones that had some flaws in the dial performed poorly. Right on the screen as well. Lot number 6 was a coral dial, 18238 with box and papers that only sold for 72,800 euros, which seems cheap because you can see many recent coral dial results from the past couple years selling in the $150,000 to $300,000 range. But if you look closely at this dial, there were several hairline cracks throughout the entire dial, scratches all over the dial, but still incredibly rare watch, and so it sold for a good amount. So stone dials still very, very much popular in the marketplace, still achieving great results, but they have to be perfect. So if you're in the market for one, be advised that if you're going to buy one with cracks, which is okay, they were very fragile, so there's going to be a lot of them with cracks in them. Make sure you're paying a price that's appropriate for it. So for example, lot 3 sold for 36,400, which was a day-date lapis dial, whereas you should expect to pay for one without cracks in, let's say, the 50K range. Moving along, let's just keep scrolling through.
So yeah, what we're seeing is stone dials with flaws. It's probably around a 25 to 35% down on ones that have perfect dials.
Right. I mean, like for example, right now we have on the website a Rubelite dial date 8 listed at $36,000. It has one teeny tiny hairline, which we noted in the listing above the 11 o'clock marker. Really, really small. Most people wouldn't have noticed it if we'd not pointed it out, but of course we're going to. And that watch probably would have been 45, 50 grand without that tiny, tiny hairline. But there's a huge difference in pricing between perfect and any flaw whatsoever, whether it's small or large on these stone dials. And that goes the same for Daytonas and other watches that would have stone dials. So moving down the line, okay, we get to our first of many in this lot, Tiffany & Co. Daytona. Monaco Legend Group's had several Tiffany & Co. Daytonas on offer. I presume because prices have been doing so well for Tiffany stuff that a lot of consigners rushed to sell their watches. They literally had 2 Paul Newman Tiffany & Co. Daytonas, and they had, I don't know, like 5 or 6 Zenith Daytonas Tiffany & Co. Just an incredible amount. And then I think also just a regular Pump Pushers 6239 Tiffany & Co. They had quite a few. Usually you see 1, maybe 2 in an entire catalog. And we're seeing strength continue with the Tiffany & Co. stuff. People love Tiffany & Co. branded stuff, and they love co-branded stuff in particular as well. There were other watches in the sale that were co-branded that did very well. Off the top of my head, I think there was a Bayer 3700. We'll get to it. But the very first lot was a two-tone 16523 Daytona, Zenith Daytona, that sold for 35,000 euros. Now, keep in mind, this watch without Tiffany & Co. is like 15 grand.
15.
Yeah, $15,000. So we're talking 25 grand premium, almost triple the value for Tiffany & Co. on the watch. And right below it, you have a stainless steel one that sold for 104,000 euros. It did have box warranty and receipt, which is a big deal with Tiffany & Co. watches, that if you have one with papers, it goes for a huge premium just to have that Tiffany provenance, so to speak. A normal Zenith Daytona in like condition, box papers without Tiffany & Co. is right around the 25-30K mark right now. So we're seeing more than triple X on the Tiffany & Co. steel Zenith Daytona. Moving down the line, and we're going to see a lot more results. If you look through the catalog, you'll see some spectacular results, especially for the Paul Newman Daytonas. I think they set records. They had one white, one black, and each of them set a record for what a Paul Newman Tiffany Daytona of that reference had sold for in auction.
Those watches are so rare.
Absolutely.
I mean, all these watches are very rare, but
Right.
Paul Newman Tiffany Daytona is definitely up there.
Yeah, it's something you don't see every day here. So right in line, lot number 27, a 6239 Panda Tiffany & Co. Daytona, Paul Newman, sold against an estimate of 500 to €1 million, sold for 689,000 euros, so like $700,000. I think the highest result before that was like 550 at auction or something like that, 580 maybe. I don't remember off the top of my head. It's certainly less than that. So I think the last time we did this update, we talked about stone dials and cosine dials as being very strong. I don't think much has changed in the last year since we've done this update. I think if you're looking to get into these watches, kind of the market's the same. You're not really going to get any added value in terms of the market going down and now being a better time to buy. It's more or less the same, if anything, maybe even a little bit stronger. What the future holds, I don't know, but at least there is strength there. This is somewhat of an interesting result right here. 666 Sea Dweller, made for Comex, selling for 84,500 euro. And it is a white gold surrounds version, not the matte dial version. It sold for 84,500. I'm not clicking through to see if it had any provenance or anything. It just says box and warranty, meaning a full set. I would have expected that to sell for over $100,000. So maybe you're seeing a little bit of a softening up in the Comex market. I think in recent auctions there has been a little bit of a softening up, but it's another market that really exploded over in the past few years. Still very popular, but maybe we're not going to see prices continue to increase at the same rate they were increasing for, let's say, the past 5 years.
Also, like the most abundant Comex,
Yeah.
the Sea Dweller. So that probably has something to affected the price.
Sure, yeah. From the catalog photo, it looks like a normal example, not a lot of patina or anything like that. Again, I'm not going to... This video will be incredibly wrong if we sit here and click through every listing. I'll say this though, you know, as a quick aside, we did bid on like 6 or 7 lots in this sale. The last sale, we ended up winning like 5 lots. This sale, we laid up a huge goose egg. We did not win a single watch. I think that goes to show that the strength of the market, I guess, or maybe we were just lowballing. I don't know. Maybe a little bit of both. But, you know, this video comes on the heels of, let's be frank, the market it's softening up and everybody talking about it. For the past year now, they've been talking about the market softening, particularly, obviously, with modern watches, but we've seen a little bit with vintage as well. I would say mainly in the 5-digit stuff, a lot of 4-digit matte dial stuff, more of your bread and butter cookie cutter watches. What have you seen especially?
What I've seen is the middle of the road examples, just your average examples, aren't pulling like crazy premiums anymore. If you want to get good results for your watches, they have to be in pristine condition.
Or something rare.
Something very rare, or like the best condition possible.
Yeah.
Like the stuff, you know, that's polished or the middle of the road condition kind of stuff, they definitely softened up a bunch.
Yeah, not to derail us away from the auction review, but yeah, I've noticed particularly a slowdown, for example, on a lot of your basic Rolex sport stuff, 4 and 5-digit watches, you know, so your matte dial Submariners, GMTs, Explorers. And I think it's actually a good thing. And we're not talking a huge setback. We're talking maybe in the realm of 10 to 20%. But there was a point in time several years ago where a basic matte dial, say, for example, 1675 unpolished perfect condition, was going to run you without box and papers over 20 grand. And now I'd say you could buy them in the mid to high teens, you know, or mid-teens even. And it's a good thing because people were getting priced out of the marketplace. And like you were saying earlier, of a 5-digit Submariner.
Oh yeah, I mean, a couple years ago you couldn't buy any Submariner for less than $10,000 unless it was a piece of crap. Now we're finding that the neo vintage and the vintage, you can get a 5513 again, or a
White gold surrounds at least.
white gold surrounds, or a 16610 with patina tritium dial for the sub 10K.
Right. And it's good because it brings people back in the market. How many messages do we get all the time where it's like, oh, I'd love to buy that watch, but I'm just it's out of my budget right now. And, when your basic Submariner is going for well over 10 grand for every model, there's no entry point for anybody. At that point, they have to start with something smaller. If they want to go Rolex, they start with an Explorer 1, and maybe that's not what they really want. Now the options are expanding in terms of what people can look at as the market softens up and, people find a better entry point into the market because prices have lowered. So let's continue to go down the list. So yeah, what you were saying though in terms of your watch being rare and special is absolutely true. For example, lot 36 here, this is another market that I felt a big softening up of, which is the Jumbo Nautilus, the reference 3700 in steel or in gold. Not as much as the watch on my wrist, which is the Jumbo Royal Oak, which got hit a little harder over the past year from their peak. The 3700 did soften up, but not quite as much, but did soften up. But this one is a 1 of 4 ever produced, according to them, Monaco Legend Group. Co-signed Bear, box, extract, archives, letters, the whole works, solid gold, and it sold for, has to be a record, 357,500 euros, so let's say around $370,000. That's a huge price. I would never have guessed that myself, but it sounds like it's a special watch, and if it's truly 1 of 4 ever produced, then the result is in line with the rarity of the watch. But for example, whereas a solid gold 3700 at its peak would have run you no cosign, just regular 3700 in gold, would have run you $250,000. Now I'd say they're probably closer to the 180 to 220 mark, depending on condition.
Yeah, they've softened up 200.
Yeah, softened up a little bit. Whereas, for example, a steel Royal Oak, like it's on my wrist, there were a couple of results I was going to pull up in the auction here. 5402 steels, but they were both with service dials. I noticed quickly because they had Swiss made on the bottom. So it's not really indicative of the market. But for example, I'm wearing an A series in fantastic condition that we have listed on our website, I think for like 98,500. But at its peak a little over a year ago, it would have been a $150,000 watch. So we're talking about a 33% drop off, whereas the Nautilus is probably closer to 10 to 20%. Scrolling
Here's a good
down.
example of Genta being good value still. You get a solid gold Genta, lot 33, sold for 6,500 euro.
Yeah, retro classic.
Like I said, 2 or 3 years ago, that watch would not have been 6,500, but considering you get a solid gold jump hour watch, retrograde,
and
I think that's great value.
I saw a couple people in our new WhatsApp, collector chat, which by the way, if anybody's interested, we started a WhatsApp group for collectors and watch discussion. You can message us on our website or through Instagram for more information, or if you'd like to join. A couple people posted that watch on their, their wrist shots for the day, and I was surprised to see that, so for sure. So I think, like we said at the beginning of the video, you're going to see a lot more interest in the earlier Genta stuff, especially with the revitalization of the brand.
Right.
And I think LVMH is headed in the right direction. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it. Okay, let's scroll on down. Yeah, I mean, so lot 44, yellow gold 1518, 650,000 euros. Again, that watch is very condition heavy, so it depends on the condition of the watch, but that's a pretty solid result.
That's a solid result.
Solid result, and for a watch that has been popular for ages, and they're so hard to find, so that I think there's no really change in the market.
Talk about the 5402. There was one that sold for 57.
Right. This like I said, I was going to bring this one up, but this is a service dial. Looks like I'll click on this link real quick. Yeah, Swiss made at the bottom, so it is circa 1972. So probably an A series. Yep.
Yeah, it is an
A series with a service dial, still sold for $60,000, which I think is
for a service dial. That's a strong result.
So let's scroll through quickly and see what else jumps out at us. Lot 56, like I mentioned earlier, rare and interesting stone dials, doing very well. This one was a platinum onyx dial, which is incredibly rare. Date sold for 170,000 euros, 169,000 euros. I've known of white gold examples and platinum examples. They trade in very rarely because there's very few of them, but I've heard of them selling in the 120 to 130 range privately. So we're talking 60K more than that in auction. It's a watch that you can't find.
Have we ever had a platinum date?
We had a white gold onyx.
No, but platinum. We never.
Not with black dial, not with an onyx dial.
Yeah, I don't.
We've had white gold.
Since I've been here, I don't think we've ever.
We've had white gold onyx. No, we've had platinum dates, just not with an onyx dial. Okay, this is a good result just to talk about lot 53, which is a 626.5 in gold with a champagne dial, a Daytona, solid gold Daytona. It sold, it says it has warranty. It sold for 169,000 euros, which is kind of in line with the market. I would say even a little high for the market. The 4-digit Daytona references have remained pretty strong. Seen a little bit of a dip on, for example, the higher end of the 6263 steels. You know, a big red Daytona at its peak, for example, white dial, black dial, doesn't matter, was around $125,000. Now we're seeing them float closer to around 90 to 110, depending on conditions. So a little bit of a correction, but not much. 6239, 6262s, all that stuff still kind of floating around the same price point as they have been for the past couple years. No really wild swings, in my opinion. You just sold that 6262, you know, for what, $52,000 basic silver dial. So nothing that's anything out of the ordinary from what we've been doing for several years now. So I think this auction, and we'll be curious to see throughout Geneva how the 4-digit Daytonas do, but for nice examples, the market really has gone kind of unchanged in the past couple years. A lot of interesting Cartier results in the sale. I'm not going to go through every single one of them. Lot 62, a very cool Cartier driver, sold for 39,000 euros. Still seeing a lot of strength with vintage Cartier, but it is a lot harder to find cool and interesting examples. So when they do come up for sale, they tend to do very well. And I like the shift because it seems like more men are willing to wear smaller size watches because of the Cartier hype, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think it's great.
And it helps that celebrities are starting to focus on those smaller vintage pieces, which is cool.
Yeah.
What is that? Which Omega? What stone is that?
It is a constellation with a tropical red stripe style, something I've never seen before.
I've never seen that, but it blew,
Pretty cool.
blew the estimate.
Lot 66, if you guys want to take a look, pretty cool watch. Interesting that they put it up.
This is the first time I'm looking at this catalog,
See,
by the way.
well, I looked at the catalog for a bit. I didn't really look at the results. Lot 87 is interesting just because it shows that great examples still do very well. I was talking about the 4-digit Rolex sports model market softening up. This is a double red sea dweller. I believe this was a Mark II with box and papers. Beautiful patina. I actually know this watch personally. It was a great example. Sold for 84,500 euros, whereas I would say I would have guessed that watch would have sold in the 50 to 60K range in today's market climate. But in auction, great examples are still great examples, and it blew out my expectations personally and sold for close to 90,000 US dollars. Going along again with the Nautilus cool down, I've noticed also a correction in the mid-size 3800 reference on both steel and gold pieces. If you were priced out before where the steel blue dials were going for over 60K, you're now able to get back into the market at a much cheaper price point. I would say more so than the jumbos, those have corrected a little bit harder. You see a gold version here selling for $46,800, and I think you can get a steel one for obviously less than that. Now in the low 40 range for a steel blue dial, so they've probably cooled off in the 25 to 30% range, back to where they were a few years ago. Before
I think the 3800, the rise
pandemic.
of the 3800 was a direct result of just the 3700s and the 5711s just being on titanium for a lot of people. And I think people were like okay with going for the smaller size, even just for the design of it.
Because it was cheaper.
Cheaper.
You know, when a 5711 is $200,000 and a 3700 is $200,000, you know, doubling in, you know, a very short amount of time, then yeah, you have to go for the 3800 that was always still less than $100,000. But it's nice to see that these prices are coming back down to reality, whereas it's a great entry point for somebody who really wants a Nautilus but still can't afford a jumbo, even with prices correcting a little bit. They've corrected a little bit harder on the 3800, so it might be time for somebody who was thinking about it before to jump in now and can actually afford one, you know?
It's also a white dial. It's a lesser desirable models, but still, I think good value.
One of my favorite watches in the sale. We're not going to discuss it because it's not indicative of any trends in the market. Lot 96, guys, go take a look. Fantastic Cartier, triple day moon phase. It was like a fresh to market watch. It's beautiful. Brief mention to lot 108, which was an incredible steel Calatrava reference 530 jumbo size Calatrava with a black gilt dial and brigade numerals. Absolutely insane watch. Goes to show you the insane watches, the really rare stuff, still do very well at an estimate of 250 to 500,000, sold for $806,000 or euros even.
Well, that one has provenance. It was owned by the famous John Goldberger.
Yeah, but still, no, listen, it does help that Mr. Goldberger owned the watch for sure, but it was just a spectacular watch. And I think interesting to point out, lot 111, not all stone dials are created equal. This is a reference 16018 with a lapis dial, but the difference is it has diamond markers at the 6 and 9. We've personally never sold any of those because just don't like them. I think the market agrees. This one sold for, on bracelet, 27,300 euros, whereas without those markers, those diamond markers, the numeral diamond markers at 6 and 9, it would have sold for at least double that, probably more.
Yeah.
It's not a very popular variant, and I think if you're into it, it's a way to get into a stone dial cheap, but you have to be into those markers and be okay with it. I personally don't like them. I like the clean look of just a regular stone. I guess the market tends to agree with me, and I know most people I talk to don't really love them either, but it is a good way to get into a stone dial cheap if you are into them.
And it's a shame Rolex doesn't make their new stone dials just clean stone. They also put the diamond markers. Kills the watch.
Yeah, but it is what it is. And rare and interesting Rolex will always be rare and interesting Rolex. Lot 125, which was a pinkled square chronograph that you really never see. I've had them from different brands, but never from Rolex. Black gilt dial, sold for 118,000 euros against an estimate of 35 to 70. Okay, so we have lot 135, a 6263 big red full set. It looks like they say mint condition. From the catalog photo, it looks to be in mint condition, and sold for 123,500 euros. Yeah, and again, that watch, you know, that's what it would have sold for privately, you know, a year and a half ago. This is all in after fees and everything like that. It's probably in a private sale now, if we had to list this on our website, you know, in the 120 range kind of thing. So it's cooled down a little bit. I feel like at auction a year ago, this would have sold for 150,000 euros as opposed to 123,500. Not a huge crash or anything like that, just a small correction in the market. And I've only really noticed it with the 6263 big reds, I think, because those exploded more than any other variant, you know, especially of all the references. Stella dials, lot 141, there's a green Stella, kind of similar to what we have on the site without bracelet. That sold for 57,200 euros. Market has cooled off a little bit for Stellas, but there were some other great results in the sale. There was a pink one, a pink dial one that sold for a lot of money. Here it is. Lot 178, but in white gold, sold for 118,300 euros. So there is a little bit of a cool down on the Stella market, but interesting colors and white metal cases will still bring in big money because they are much rarer. Doubling back to the Tiffany watches, 146. Like I said, I knew there was something in here that was Tiffany, but not Newman. There was a 6239 double Swiss retailed by Tiffany & Co. that sold for 214,500 euros. So a regular double Swiss should go in like the 120 range. So this sold for almost double with Tiffany & Co. on it.
Excuse my ignorance. What is the Pucci Papaleo letter? What is that?
Pucci wrote a letter probably testing the watch. Pucci Papaleo is one of the foremost...
the book.
Yeah, he wrote the little Daytona book. Yeah, okay. He's one of the foremost vintage Daytona experts in the world. And I guess he wrote a letter certifying the watch. Just to jump back, coral dial lot 182 with diamond lug reference, which doesn't really matter to me, but apparently it was a perfect dial, full set, sold for 227,500 euros, whereas the other one sold for like 78,000 with cracks in the dial. Just goes to show you, like we were saying before, perfect dials are perfect dials, especially on stone dials, and you got to get them perfect to make the money or command the money.
I wanted to see the price difference between Mickey and Donald. They're the same.
You know, this one was sold for 2,000 euros more. Maybe Donald Duck's more popular.
Donald Duck brings the premium.
Donald Duck brings the premium. He brings the ladies. Okay, lot 220. We had a extremely rare, well-preserved, and oversized 13ZN central minute counter chronograph wristwatch, reference 5161. So this was a jumbo chronograph, 13ZN, that has two different chronograph hands, kind of like a split seconds. Not quite, but kind of. This was a watch. It sold for 13,000 euros against an estimate of 15 to 30. This is a watch that 5 years ago would have sold for 60,000.
Yeah.
When 13ZNs were extremely popular and early 40s, 50s, 60s chronographs were extremely popular, they have cooled off significantly. It's interesting to see this result. I didn't think I would ever see such a low result for this rare of a watch, 13ZN12. But, you know, trends have changed, and I think if you are ever interested in one of these watches, now is the right time to start looking for them while prices are down, because all this stuff tends to be very cyclical. So while this is not popular now, in a few years, it very easily go back to being popular again. Kind of like Omega's gone in and out of fashion. Certain Rolex have gone in and out of fashion. We're seeing a lot of renewed interest in bubble backs, for example, which used to be the pinnacle of Rolex collecting. Then they completely fell off a cliff, and now they're kind of coming back with people being interested again in smaller size wristwatches and rare and interesting stuff.
We used to sell a ton of steel 13ZNs.
Yeah, yeah. And they're fantastic watches. The best movement that Longines ever made, the most historic.
Absolutely. It's one of the best chronograph movements of all time.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I can absolutely see those watches making a comeback for sure. I think it's just right now trends are not there, you know? So if you're in the market for one, it might be time to start looking. This is a nice result.
There is tropical.
Yeah, 14790, so which is the 37 millimeter steel Royal Oak, selling for 42,900 euros. And so while Royal Oaks have cooled off when they have incredible, this one has like an incredible caramel tropical dial, still selling for strong money. I would have guessed that this would have sold in today's current market climate around 35,000 and sold for about 10 grand more.
Yeah, it's a very strong result for that watch.
Yeah. I guess let's jump to close it off with the very last lot in the catalog, Leroy 281, which was a fresh to market 6263 Oyster Soto, which means oyster at the bottom, a Rolex Cosmograph Oyster, which is the rarest version of a Paul Newman Daytona dial, or one of them. They were selling at their peak, especially like even like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, for over $1 million. I think it was the first Newman to break $1 million. And they have cooled off significantly in the past couple years, with many examples at auction going well under $1 million in like the 700 to 800K range. This one with a tropical dial selling for 1.796 million euros, so let's say $1.85, almost $2 million. I would have never expected that.
It's a huge result.
A huge result. Looks like a beautiful watch, but still in today's market conditions with RCOs kind of falling a little bit out of favor in the past couple years, I would have expected this to sell closer to the $1 to $1.2 million range. I was very wrong.
That dial is really nice.
Style's beautiful. So I think, again, just goes to show you that really rare and interesting watches. I mean, there's other RCOs in the market, but none with like a beautiful tropical dial like that, selling for a big premium. Listen, there's a lot of other lots we could talk about. It'll be interesting to see how the Geneva auctions shake out this weekend, what stays strong, what trends continue, what watches continue to fall down, go the opposite way. And I guess we could post an update to this video when I get back from Geneva. I'm going to be filming some content out there for you guys to watch, and hopefully we'll be able to do a further analysis once the auctions are over and get a much better sense of the lay of the land, especially in the marketplace, once those are done. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys have any questions, ask them below. We'll do our best to answer them timely. As always, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, anything you do to help us grow the channel, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.